Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar interview. I'm Francis Seeley from Mental Voices and Global Net 21. And this is one of the regular interviews we do, talking to people who've made a difference, involved in the campaign, doing something different in our local community, or even local politicians as well. And today we've got Brian Lewis with us, who has a really nice cafe in Green Lanes, Palmer's Green, called Mytime, and he's going to talk to us about high street regeneration. Now, if you are on the webinar system, you can type in any comments on the right-hand column. I'll just type in hi there, and you can see it. And you can type in questions there, and we can pick them up for Brian. If you're watching the stream on any of the Facebook groups, please type in the comments. We're more likely to pick them up on the GlobalNet page and the Mental Voices sites, because it's impossible to cover about 10 different sites all at once. You have to be a miracle man to do that. Anyhow, Brian, thanks for joining us. And it's great that you're here, and people will see in a minute, I think you're in a sort of spaceship attic, which looks rather nice. Now, you're involved, I know, in high street regeneration, and it's one of the things that you feel strongly about. But first of all, maybe you could tell us a little about yourself and why you have this passion for a thriving high street.
Okay, well, I've had various different guises in business and also in the corporate field as well. Always in what I call high street catering. So I work for companies like Pizza Hut, Pret a Manger, Eat, Hummingbird Bakery, but also have had my own businesses on the smaller high streets in Haringey, in Kentish Town, Islington, and now I'm Palmer's Green. Palmer's Green especially because I live here. I've lived here like nearly 30 years. And one of the reasons for opening up Mytime was trying to leave that corporate world behind, but stay local. And what I've seen in really the last 3 years since we've been open is the sort of great demise of local high streets, retail going, and things like multiples of the same type of shop opening up, which sort of stops people, I think, really wanting to use their local high street. So what we're trying to do is, now we are where we are, what will the future hold for the local high street? And if we sort of get an idea of where that future is, how are we going to sort of stay and keep our high streets thriving?
Okay. Well, let's take it step by step. I mean, we talk about regeneration, and people are always talking about the word regeneration, and it means everything to anyone. I mean, what do you mean when you talk about regeneration?
Basically, I think it's just, from our perspective, from also a business perspective, is surviving in an environment that has turned from 360 degrees, really, from being retail, which it ultimately was, to having a high street that's now, I suppose, hospitality based, and based on, things like hairdressers and nail bars, service based, I suppose, is the other word for it. So regenerating where we are now is doing things like keeping the high street looking good, keeping our shops looking good, keeping footfall as high as we can. So it's bringing people back to our high street. But the big question is, how do we continue doing that?
Okay, well, we'll come to some of those ideas about the change from retail to service in a minute, and maybe beyond that even. But why do you think the high street as we used to know it has gone into decline? What's happened?
Several factors, I suppose. The main two, from my perspective, is obviously online. Online, easy for, as we are sitting here in front of a laptop, to go online and order what you need, and then get it delivered. So there's two services started there. There's the online part of it, then there's a delivery side of it. And also retail parks just out of town, sitting out here. We've got the A10, our retail park on the Cambridge Road there. It's got some lovely shops out there, all multiples, where it's easy to get to, greater volume of cars that are able to be parked. So that's ease, I suppose, ease. The other thing that has affected us on the high street is for pure retail, like your butcher, your baker, greengrocer, to stay in a high street, apart from that high footfall, is to have a reasonable level of things like business rates, rentals, as we all know, are at an all-time high. Without the turnover, it's not survivable.
So, I mean, people who are in favour of regeneration are not Luddites, really, are they? They're not people who say, you know, we don't like shoppers making rational choices and having the convenience of online shopping. You say we have to accept that and work within those parameters. Yeah,
we do. We need to be realistic. It's not, and as much as I'd love it to happen, it's not coming back in the same way as it was retail to our high streets. And I think as all of us being stakeholders in this, it's a matter of us getting together, you know, residents, landlords, the council, and the businesses, and say, get our heads together and say, how can we continue? How can we improve? And you know something, it's being done. It's not totally impossible. It's a lot of work, but it can happen. It takes us all to get together and do it.
I mean, the other factor you face, you know, as a small businessman, as a small retailer in Palmer's Green, is like everywhere else, you have to face the big change and the franchises as well. And how big is that a problem? And is that a fact of life as well?
Yes, yeah. If you think from our perspective, we have a couple of large multiples not far from us who sell coffees, croissants, and funnily enough, if it was 2 or 3 cafes and a couple of multiples, we can all survive and survive happily. What really impacts is when there's a huge amount, a growing amount of smaller independent businesses doing the same thing, and where a multiple has a brand and a strong brand and people go to that, where the smaller independents all fight for that, what's sort of left there, and it then is the case of getting your local residents on board to use you. So how am I going to be better than one of the other small independent businesses?
I mean, because you're in competition with online and with the big players, you know, Hannah Dyson is asking, I mean, do you have to, I mean, do people expect more of you now? Have you got to up your game? Have you got to do something different? Yeah,
definitely. I suppose where we are now, gone are the days, from my perspective, and the cafe culture which we're trying to grow. It's not just good enough to slap a few rashers of bacon, a couple of eggs, and a sloppy cup of coffee on the plate anymore, and someone's going to say thank you very much. No, we go particularly go down the organic route. We try and use local. We try and then put money that comes in back into the local economy. So it's sort of thinking on a bigger picture scale. How do we compete with the multiples? You know, funnily enough, as perhaps Hannah said, we try and keep our game as high as possible, and we keep reinventing ourselves. We have improving all the time.
Well, you have to reinvent yourself, and the high street has to reinvent itself as well. And you're right, aren't you? What you said earlier, we can't go back to 40 years ago. No. The high street's a different place. It's not just a place for shoppers anymore. It's a place for communities as well. It's a sort of public square, and you've got to really look upon that in its totality, don't you?
Yeah, we do. Like I said before, it's services based. Palmer's Green itself, you can see it's hospitality based with the cafes, with that social aspect. People use those cafes now with a lot of home-based workers to sit and work and come. So we have to supply or need Wi-Fi in all our premises. And that's good. That's good because it means that there is a use, there is a need for the high street. It's how we develop that use.
So you wouldn't get angry at a person like me who would come in for 2 hours and have one cup of coffee with his laptop?
No. That's perhaps ever asked the question. No, listen. That's again. What we find is, and I suppose some of the other cafes would attest to this, is you have your customer group who will come in because they like you, they like your cafe, they like the owner, they like the ambience, and they'll sit and come. And do you know, funnily enough, unless it is a chain, we don't tend to get that. We tend to get people who will come in, they'll sit for a couple of hours, and we know they're going to do work, but they'll come in and have a coffee, they'll have a breakfast, they may have a little light lunch. So they'll do all those things, and we're developing that. We're developing that culture, and we're saying, yeah, we're happy to go with that.
So,
person, but
yeah. So how do you see the high street developing? I mean, will it be a combination of shops, advice centres, meeting places, cafes, and even open air entertainment and gatherings? I mean, that would transform the high street if you had all of that together, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that I suppose is the ultimate. If you look at some of other high streets that are starting to develop that and actually continuing, Blackheath is one which is phenomenal in its development and what it does there. Pop-up shops, pop-up restaurant, open air, a market, weekly market. We're then going down to places like Middleton Road, Lucy Whitehead, and what she's done there with the market and that open air environment that comes with that, but also the cafes that lend themselves to promotions. We do in Mytime pop-up shops, pop-up restaurants. So we take our space and use our space as well, not just for us, but for others to try and get our local residents more interested in the high street.
Tell us a bit more about the pop-up idea. Some people may not know what that means. What do you mean by that?
Okay, from our perspective, what it is we have a space. Say the space is not continually used and we don't get continual turnover, and we're not always lucky enough to have that. What I thought about was taking that space, wherever it may be in the restaurant, and using it. So we have had in the past couple of weeks Turkish pop-up restaurant, a African vegan pop-up restaurant. We've got a Caribbean one coming up soon. And we have our space, which we rent out at a very reasonable rate to small, home-based craft entrepreneurs, and they'll use the space. This Saturday, we've got little pop-up retail unit. A jeweler, B. Georgie Maria's coming in. She's going to use the space at the front of the cafe to sell her jewellery. She only works from home. She hasn't got that high street frontage, so we can share. We've got it to use, and this is this thing about developing how high streets move forward in the future. What
about the idea of the pop-up shop, like the furniture shop up near Oderman's Hill, where people come in for a short period of time, go away, and someone else comes in? Is that something that you look at favourably, or does that cause sort of distraction?
I think, listen, it's good. It means that there's a space that would stay dead. We'll put a decal on it and it may stay there forever if we want it to look nice. But this way it's getting used. Now, the only thing we would say is sort of what goes in there would be need to be considered perhaps to keep that sort of higher level of shopping and availability to the customers in the area. The other thing with those big spaces, when we're talking about pop-up, if and this is going back to landlords, if they would work with the local other local business and residents, we could use those for things like little pop-up indoor markets. What used to be the Starbucks site, for example, massive, sitting there doing nothing. When that furniture shop goes, that's something for us to talk to landlords about.
Well, yeah, well, Sarah Dodgson's raised that point. I mean, can a shop have more than one entrepreneur in it? You know, can you have two people running it? I mean, I've often thought, for example, a big place like the places at Oldham's Hill or Store 21, which is so big, it'd be wonderful if it was a massive food restaurant with little, you know, entrepreneurs selling Caribbean food and Italian food and Libyan food, and people could go in and there was a cafe, maybe not a cafe because it could be you, but you know, if you had lots of people sharing like that, you could transform the place, couldn't you? And you really need to get the council on your side for that. You need some help.
We do. This is going back to something which I was going to bring up with the council, being able to look at, for example, bigger picture, I suppose it's in the end, is planning rules and how to make it easier to go from what's called A1 retail to A3 catering or hot food service. And you know that idea, there used to be something, I think it may be around, called in-store, where they went in and a company goes in and they take big retail spaces and they split them into smaller units. That, on a food basis, would be amazing to have all those little different ethnic food varieties. And Palmer's Green caters for so much. But again, council lending their hand there to have a look in the change of the planning rules, and the landlords who have those big units thinking, actually, yeah, you know, I can get my unit rented, and we could get it used, we could get it filled, we could get people coming to our high street on a more frequent basis then. And I tell you, what a buzz, what a culture that will then create and continue creating.
Yeah, absolutely. So it means working with the council, getting them to change the planning rules, allow multi-use of a single unit from different people, and it could be really exciting. Carol Stanley says, I'm not sure what she means because I'm not sure what this concept is, but she said a few years ago, a group of people started cash mobbing small businesses, all waiving a tenner. I don't know what that means, but maybe you do, and you could sort of, you know. Yeah,
it's lovely. I think Love Your Doorstep made had something to do with it. So basically, what happens is you pick an area, you pick a couple of stores, and you say, right, we've got a tenner. Everyone takes a tenner in their hand. You just hit that area, and you'll spend that tenner in small independent businesses. So what they get is like a little influx of cash, but also what they also do, people perhaps wouldn't come out and use those little independent stores as often and frequently, and it's good to go to ones you've never used before.
The other thing I quite liked, it's just started, I mean, a lot of charity shops, and that's good because people really use them now, but you know, the Citizens Advice Bureau one really excited me in a way because it's not only just a charity shop in the back, it's got a room for people to go to have an advice, and to have a place right on the high street where people can go by appointment and get advice. Is that something you value as well?
Well, I suppose we need advice bureaus. We've got we need areas because they're closing down now. I know they're closing down in droves. So we need places where people can go as part of the social aspect of the high street to get advice. You know what I like about how they've done that particular charity shop, and I think this is going in all more charity shops where they're more retail focused, is they've gone for the retro aspect with the clothes. And they're displayed nicely, and people come in, and I suppose they can take them into changing rooms and get changed. So they've thought not just about raising funds for the charity, but how the retail aspect of it is impacting our high street. And you know, if you take out the charity moniker on the top of the shop, it looks like a clothes shop.
Right. Yeah. It does, but I quite like the advice bit as well because you know, people are going through so many problems now, and having it right there, right in the town centre, great.
Going back to your multiple use example.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Right, absolutely. The multiple use, I know. Okay, so let's tell me a bit about what you've done. I mean, you've been active, haven't you, in the Green Lanes Business Association?
Yeah.
Doing lots of things, like, for example, raising money for Christmas lights, which was very successful. Do you want to tell us about all of that?
Yeah, sure. So last couple of years, as we know, councils are cash strapped. We haven't had the best of lights, and we haven't had any, I don't think, for the last couple of years. So what the Green Lanes Business Association, the chairman, vice chairman, and the committees that said was, look, we can't go another year of doing this. What can we do? We sat down, we had the council come into one of our meetings, and the suggestion was, listen, we can raise funds. We can't raise all the funds, and it's not fair to go to residents and try and collect all this money. So what we did was we went around our businesses, our local businesses, and the council, to be fair to them, said, listen, if you can raise a certain amount, we'll match it. I think we raised in the region of £7,000, and they matched up to 5. The lights cost approximately 10,000. They're up there at the moment. There are a few more to go up, so I understand. So what we've done is made it all a bit brighter. We then got on board a fantastic group of residents. There's Claude White, Dana Burstow, Carl Brown's on board as well, helping us out, and Natasha Morris and a few others. And they then corralled a few other mums and dads to go around and I suppose get all the stores on board. And what we then followed up and did was did a Christmas lights in the windows for all the stores. And again, those mums went around and they got people involved. And then we got the deputy mayor and Bambas Charalambas came up to turn the lights on at the Triangle. So it all sort of fell together. And a few weeks ago, we turned the lights on a bit earlier. I know people are saying, oh, Christmas sounds early in Palmer's Green, but for this year it did. And we had the most amount of people ever come to one of these turning the Christmas lights on. We had a choir there from Walker School. Thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. I had Hazelwood come down as well. And everyone got involved. And you know, the community, the sense of community that Lent was, you know, couldn't pay for it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and you had even music in your cafe at that time, I remember, which was great. But you're sort of using this as a model, aren't you, and trying to branch out and trying to involve in what you do, not just local businessmen, but like you did with the Christmas tree lights thing, other stakeholders, schools and families and the council and so on. So how are you going about doing that?
So what we're doing there is that, for example, we've got some money left over. So we're trying to get together like an events calendar. And Claude White's been very much part of this, and Dana, in getting volunteers together. Because what we want to do with what we've got left over is go back now, if we go back to the regeneration thing, is how do we improve our high street? How does it look nicer? How does it look better? So we're thinking of getting hanging plants, and Costas Georgiou, who's currently heading up the Green Lanes Business Association, has got prices, and hopefully we'll get made brackets to put up on all the shops who want them. We will then put hanging plant baskets up on there, and then hopefully what the volunteers will then do is get together and they will keep those baskets watered, keep them nice and tidy. And this is made up of pension groups, mums, local gardeners, or local green finger people like getting involved as well. And on the events calendars, what we tend to do is want to spread that. So last year, for example, we have things like the Easter egg hunt. We want to add in a summer festival. Last year's Palmer's Green Festival was really successful, one of the best I think they had. So hopefully go back, work with Philip and Carl for the next festival. What we did then was did a sort of a pre-festival where we did again go back and did our pop-up shops along the high street. So if we can extend that for next year, get more of the smaller home-based craft businesses involved with that as well, everything starts to sort of expand and extend.
Yeah, well, we've had comments coming out saying, you know, that the turning on the lights was fantastic and they really enjoyed it. And Carol was saying that Karen was really great, and she's Enfield's loss. I misread it first. I thought she said Karen was Enfield's boss, but she said Karen is Enfield's loss. But I mean, how are you sort of working with the council? I mean, a lot of what you do depends on volunteers, depends on business people, depends on community groups, and that's more important than anything else. If you could get them on board, you've got the momentum going. But how are you working with the council, and are you getting them to do the things that you would like them to do?
Yeah, but I mean, the first part of this, I think, was going to the council and saying, listen, we need to work together to try and raise some funds. So that started a dialogue. And hopefully this will just grow. We've got sort of, like we need the council to take on board this change of use in the planning procedures. So we're talking with them now as a committee. Further on, we do need more engagement with the council. We need to sit on a more of a one-to-one basis, speak with person heading up Regeneration. And I know things are chopping and changing there, but eventually, once it settles, we need to sit on a more regular basis and say, these are our plans. So the big plan is a market on the high street once a month. How fantastic would that be? But we need the council fully on board with that. Middleton Road have done that so well. Haringey, Blackheath as well, and a few others. But the council need to understand that they do understand. We need to engage with them. We need to engage on a frequent basis, and we need to move things forward. We have a high street and high streets that if we carry on in the same vein, we'll just stop, and they'll stop dead, and we cannot afford that to happen.
Yeah, well, maybe we can get the council to work really collaboratively on this, and I hope councillors will listen to this and hear what you're saying. And maybe the examples you've given in Blackheath and Middleton Road could be good case studies of how to work together that you can demonstrate to them does work. Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the interview now. How would you like to see, or how do you see the future of the high street, say, in 10 years' time from now?
Too far to look forward, I think, of the way things are. What we'd like to see is that we have hubs. It is a social hub. It's going to be a social hub. It's going to grow. And within that growth of the high street is like I said, all those stakeholders in there. They're all involved. And we have centres where you can go and come and sit and chat, where you can sit and have a cup of coffee. Where we can walk up and down our high road and think, actually, it's really nice, and it's consistently nice because our landlords are involved, and us as residents are involved in keeping our high streets clean, and us as business people are involved in keeping our shops and our fascias clean, and sticky labels are taken off, and small things like this, which will grow and ensure people keep coming back to the high street. 10 years' time, I think in the environment is now is too far to look. But if we look in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, we want a lovely place for people to come along and sit and chill and walking up and down and come and shop and come have the kids ride up and down those lovely cycle lanes that sit in there. So pure involvement, I think. That's the high street for us.
Okay, well, we're getting a lot of comments. People like Carol Stanley says she's on the EIB committee, so talk to her. She'd love to talk to you.
Lovely.
Hannah Dyson talking about car-free zones. We won't go down that avenue at the moment because that could be problematic, but we will talk about that sometime because it is a very real issue. And lots of city centres are now going for car-free areas, but we'll leave that for now. Let me ask you a final question then. If people want to get involved and help you and get involved in any campaign or get involved in any volunteering, where do they go? Who do they contact?
Okay, so I'm quite happy for anyone to contact us at Mytime. Pop in, give us some your details and information. We have we're revamping the Green Lanes Business Association website. It's long needed, and it's going to be something, a platform for people to see what's going on in Palmer's Green. But there's a Facebook page. It's called Love Palmer's Green, and you can get on there and you can put any information you want, any advice you want to give us, anything you want us to look at, we will do. I suppose that's the initial thing. Then we can pass on to others who are involved. So on our business association, I'd like to say it's not just the businesses. We have got people like Dana Burstow and Claude White, and Natasha's been along as well, who come and sit on that committee, and they are involved. And also we've got involvement with home businesses as well, who don't have a high street face. So there's all different avenues for you to come along and get involved.
Okay, well, thank you very much for doing that, Brian. I think people will have found that very interesting. It would have inspired them to think differently, to come up with new ideas, and hopefully in those 2 or 3 years time from now, we'll see a different high street and a new recreated, vibrant high street. So thanks very much for doing that. And we'll finish that now and end this interview. So thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Francis. Much appreciated.